And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. It's SJJMAS 2025, number 3, with everybody's favourite, David Yorkshire.
Most of us today think we've had no encounters with gnomes. But there are many things we don't see unless we look carefully. Think how difficult it is to spot a tiny little gnome.
Staring at the bottom of the glass, hoping one day you'll make a dream last. The dreams come slow, you go so fast.
With him, you have to know what to look for.
David, welcome back. How are you?
What the fuck is that about gnomes?
Well, look, you don't know the trouble that I had to try and find something that was, I don't know, pagan or nature related or whatever. So I came up with this little gnome.
No, gnomes are not pagan at all. That was a complete invention by Paracelsus.
Well, you'll have to explain it to me. But anyway, how are you? I've not spoken to you for a year.
That's very true, yeah. Almost a year. We did
Literally
one in January,
though,
didn't we?
It was nothing personal. Literally, I've not spoken to anybody, even Claire Core, for a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Claire Core actually approached a mutual acquaintance to try to get me on her show, you know, on a
really?
Karana Yule.
Yeah. Are you going on?
No, fuck. The problem with Claire Core's show is likes two things: sincerity and an audience.
Well, she tries. I mean, she tries, but she's a one-man army. By the way, everybody, I am going to, David, set there's a super chat goal on this stream that I'm going to set, which is 20 super chats of £50 or more within 30 minutes. I think that's a reasonable goal. And if I meet that goal, ladies and gentlemen, then I'll celebrate by telling you who my favourite character is in Doctor Who. So I've started that goal of just 20 super chats, £50 or more. I think that's achievable, everybody. So what do you think, David? Do you think the gift
That's super. Oh dear, that's the worst shilling I've ever heard for super chats.
No, in all sincerity, don't send me your money, ladies and gentlemen. If you do get the inclination to send me your money, I would rather you invest in yourselves, go and buy yourself some ETH, and don't look at it till 2035. That would be my request.
Go and buy yourself some E's, did you say?
No, some Ethereum.
All right.
Okay, that's what I want you to do for yourself and your children this Christmas in lieu of flowers or gifts. But back to you, David. How the devil have you been? How's the year been? What do you think of the situation that we're currently in? Where do you see things going? Give me a summation of where we are and what's to come.
Very interesting times, actually. And people are coming round to the nationalist way of thinking, which is rather good. But what we have to be aware of and be wary of is the Tommy-tards, of course. We have to beware of the likes of Tommy Tardington, the Israel Firsters, and those kind of people. Channel it into dead ends, especially all this nonsense about Christian nationalism, which is a contradiction in terms. And they're trying to... It's the old bait and switch, isn't it? I made a little meme about that. You know, it's the old Raiders of the Lost Ark one where he's got the prize statue, the golden statue in one, and he's trying to replace it with a heap of rocks in a bag on the other, isn't it? So taking away ethno-nationalism and replacing it with Christian, whatever it is, Christian Zionism probably. But it's all neoconservatism at the end of the day. It's just new manifestations of that. Someone has written in the comments, pagans didn't have written word to expand their culture, and we're not big on popularizing it. It's odd that, because I've read a lot of texts from Latin authors, and they're all pagans.
Interesting. I think
and ancient Greek, of course. So that's not really true. It is in the north, of course, but there's a rich wealth of pagan culture and pagan writings. Especially, I recommend everyone read Vitruvius, his 10 books on architecture, which is a wonderful foundational document. Especially, it goes further reaching. It's very far reaching, not just on architecture, but on the pagan understanding of the world, and also on how things relate to the self, and how architectural proportions relate to the gods, which relates to oneself, and so on. It's very interesting. So stuff on temple building, also on how rites and rituals are not just completely useless and nonsensical things like in Christianity, but they do actually serve a purpose for pagans. Like, for example, when people are building cities, one of the things they used to do was examine the entrails, and Christians go, examining the entrails is just nonsense and superstition. Actually, there's a very good reason for it, and that was to examine the animals and what they were eating, and so if the pasture was actually good and worth cultivating, and so on. So those were reasons for that. You had the spiritual reason, but there was a physical, practical reason as well, as unlike with Christianity. I just thought I'd throw that in.
Sure. Well, I think when people bring up this claim, and I think you alluded to it, somewhat correct in Northern Europe, that there is some lack of textual evidence, and the stuff that we do have comes mainly, am I correct, David, in thinking that the people who preserved it were in fact Christian monks who wrote most of this down, that's actually survived in England or in Northern Europe or whatever, and that might be what the guy's on about?
Christian nominally, and certainly not monks. The biggest surviving text, the two that relate to the old mythos, if you like, is the two Eddas. Now, one, of course, we don't know the author to that, but the other one is by Snorri Sturluson, who was nominally Christian, although accused in his own lifetime of being a pagan. So it's really paganism with a sort of Christian gloss over the top of it to make it sort of acceptable, if you see what I mean. But even the poetic Edda's been sort of Christianized towards the end in the final stanzas. But
how much do you think we genuinely know about Northern European paganism, and is a lot of it concocted?
No, we know quite a lot about Northern European paganism because it didn't really die out. It became sort of blended with people, especially village people, to quote a 70s band of rather dubious character. But no, not those village people, but people living out in the sticks. I mean, it's often called heathenism for a reason, because, of course, the people who preserved it were ones who were left alone. If you see, they were too unimportant to consider, and they were not in the Borg, if you like, they were not bourgeois. In other words, the people, the townies that were in the fortified areas, of course, because that's the where it comes from. So. We still know quite a bit. People were still worshipping Odin and so on, right into the Middle Ages, into sort of the 14th, and I think the last person to be executed for worshipping Odin, if I remember right, was in the 15th century. So it survived a very long time, and.
Well, this actually brings me to the thumbnail that I used, all off my own back, by the way, for this stream, if I can bring this up. So this is somebody's representation here, I'll bring it up on the screen, that Santa Claus is in fact Odin.
This is true. You'll find this with a lot of the Norse legends and so on. For example, the George and the Dragon is just a Christian reconfiguration of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. And it's the same with St. Nicholas, is a Christian gloss of Odin, the Yule Father, the giver of gifts, and so on. The person decorated in evergreen and so on, all the holly, all that kind of, because ultimately paganism is about nature, and the gods are, in one aspect, manifestations of nature.
So you think that the Santa Claus myth is based upon the character of Odin, literally?
Oh, absolutely it is. Right. Absolutely, and that's not just me saying so. That's scholars as well. In fact, even if you read the Wikipedia page, it's talked about.
I mean, Bob Altberger tells us that Saint Nicholas was an IRL person, and obviously the traditional story is that it's Saint Nicholas who used to give gifts somewhere in Scandinavia, was it?
I have no idea where St. Nicholas comes from. I mean, these things don't interest me so much. I thought, actually, that he was from down in Anatolia, where a lot of these saints appear from. Is that not true?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you. My knowledge on this is very limited. Where does, David, our knowledge of Odin come from, and who was Odin himself? If I go to Wikipedia, I literally have this photo, and I must say, it is a Santa Claus-esque figure.
Yeah, absolutely. Big sort of strapping bloke with a beard. Odin is of course, a god. He's the father of the Norse pantheon and the head of the Norse pantheon. And well, that's that's, I don't know what you want more than that, really. But the idea is that on one level the gods were, well, there are two lots of gods. There's the Vanir and the Aesir, and they represent, of course, two tribes that existed, and probably as near as we can discern it, the Aesir are from the Caucasus Mountains, and the Vanir are sort of the ones from northwestern Europe, and the two sort of battled and eventually formed an alliance. And so that's the foundation of our people as well. It is a foundational myth. So the gods do actually exist in physical form at one time.
In what sense? What do you mean by that? You mean these were literal people?
They are literally our ancestors. There is a part of this that is ancestor worship.
So are you suggesting that Odin was somebody who lived on the earth and then was venerated later? Or am I completely missing?
Yes, he was venerated. As I say, because he's sort of founded the people. He's elevated to goddom. Okay. That is the same with all gods originally, of course, including Yahweh, who's the Christian god, although he's the god of the Jews.
Yes, indeed. So, what do you think about this idea that, I mean, people will say that Christianity is much more authentic because we have the story of the people who wrote it down at the time, and all this pagan shit is just all cobbled together, from loose ends. We don't really know much about it. It's kind of esoteric, but at least we have the story. passed down, from the people of the Bible, etc., etc. And of course, like the story of the Jews, they're intertwined with Europe now. The Christian version that was given to the Gentiles melded itself with European culture. The Europeans became Christian. They really are,
but
intertwined.
it wasn't. Jesus did not really speak to. Well, when you're talking about Gentiles in that context, you're talking about Middle Easterners and Greeks. That's hence there is neither Greek nor Jew quotation, although there were a lot of Hellenized Jews, of course, at that time. So there is a bit of a blend at that point, but it is really Jewish, and especially as you've got the whole of the Old Testament there, and you really have the Jewish God Yahweh.
Who I guess you're not very fond of, right?
It doesn't matter. It's not my tradition. Simple as that. And I recognise that at an early age. This is not sort of reactionary. I was told the tales, and you say that we haven't got the story. Well, we have. This is what the Eddas are there about, and of course they were carried in oral tradition up until that point when they were written down. So we do have that. And of course the sagas, if you read Volsunga saga, for example, Odin appears in it.
Were you brought up a Christian?
Yes, I went to Sunday school and everything.
Sing songs at school, assembly, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We had that when we were kids. It was a different time.
Do you remember as a child believing in it? Or
No.
Remember you didn't believe in it?
Even though, I have Methodist preachers in my family. And, with a sermon ever ready. But no, I was also read to as a child, especially by my grandmother, who read to me the old folk tales, old Norse tales and stuff like that. And that seemed far more real to me than anything else. Because I knew instinctively, of course, that these were my people, these were my gods, and I self-identified with them.
That's interesting. I actually was read to by my old... They weren't the high intellectual books that you were read to, but I was read old Enid Blyton books when I was.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
I remember specifically this one about. So thinking back now to the stories that I remember my gran reading to me, these old Enid Blyton books about children going into a forest. There's like magical tree. They go up the tree, and there are all kinds of. I don't know, some magical land at the top of the tree, and they'd have all these different encounters in this magical land at the top of the tree. And I guess all this was very pagan inspired. There's certainly nothing Christian about it, looking back.
Yeah, I mean, Doxastic Draco 9990 in the comments there confirms that, Nicholas was a 4th century Anatolian Greek. So, all that Hyperborea stuff and elves and everything, that does not come from Christianity. That comes from the pagan tradition.
I've just been told my microphone is out of balance with yours, so I've just changed that. I don't know if I've probably made things worse, but
Right.
I'll listen back to it and figure this out.
I'll try not to shout.
Right, I've turned you down a little.
The audio, gets too high. SJJ too low. I'll try to whisper.
Yeah, we didn't have long to figure this out in the opening sense. What do you think, David?
No, I'm afraid that was my fault. I'm like, I'm like Harvey Price when it comes to technology.
You mentioned earlier on. I only have David for like I don't know 40 minutes or something. Anyway, so we've got to rattle through topics here. Anyway, what do you think? You mentioned Christian nationalism earlier. Let's get down to the politics of stuff, David. What you know that this kind of is rising in America. It's been put forward as an alternative. Do you not think that it is a at least an alternative to the system that we have today? That there may be some use in this.
I see no good can come from it at all because, as I say, the thing about Christian nationalism is it's inherently multiracial. And you look at Tommy Robinson in a Tommy Tards, and he's always trying to downplay race, except when it comes to a certain tribe.
Well, I don't think Tommy is a Christian nationalist, is he anyway? Tommy's just like, I don't know if you can even say retard on
A
YouTube anymore,
shill.
but
He's just a shill. I don't think he has any hardcore beliefs in anything, really.
no, he doesn't.
He may even be working for the security services in Britain. That's a possibility, and he may equally be just some cokehead who's been put there because he serves a purpose.
I think the latter, to be honest. I think that's much more likely. I don't buy that he's like an agent of the state. Really, I can't believe. I mean, they did imprison him. He did disappear for a year. Where did he go?
No, he disappeared for a year, but was he in prison? That's another question.
Well,
He
this is what I
claims
assume.
to have been in prison for a year, but yet, he's supposedly in solitary confinement. Well, that's a good get out, isn't it? Because then nobody sees him, and and because nobody sees him, he can say, "Oh, I was in solitary." Well, why would you be in solitary confinement? That it doesn't make sense. You have to be really, sort
Because
of one
the
of the
Muslims that
evil
attack him.
doers. Well, this is the thing. He claims to, have had Muslims attack him all the time, but yet at the same time be in solitary confinement. Well, the two don't go together, do they? Either he was attacked by Muslims because he was in the general prison population, or he was in solitary confinement where they couldn't get him. Which is it? So
Well, I think put into solitary to stop the Muslims attacking him, basically. Because I mean, it's a high-profile figure. If he ended up getting killed in prison, then the state would have the bigger problem on their hands of, well, look what you let happen to Tommy, etc. This is the devil's advocate argument, of course.
Well, as I say, the dubious, because I remember him from his very beginnings. I was in the British National Party when he appeared, and his first mission, if you like, was to break up BNP meetings. Is to bring these two black guys, and then start screaming racism when they didn't get in, and so on.
Yeah.
So,
Don't you think like a cokehead who's like, he must have a lot of Irish in him. It reminds me of like a little Irish gypsy, always wanting to fight and stuff. That this type of character would be impossible for the state to make an agent. I can't imagine it's all an act. He just seems like.
well, that's if he is who we're given these stories. We're given these stories, but how many of them are true? I don't know. As I say, I don't know, and I don't think that anyone else really does either.
Yeah.
Strange thing how
we are in a bind in the UK because he does lead the populist resentment against government. Whenever the pressure builds up, whenever the country gets to the boiling point, Tommy is there to go and do a march in London. And Brutus and I were talking about it, on the show last year, that after what happened in Southport with Ruda Cabana, we all know what happened, and then the country was, the working class riots were happening. The migrant hotels were being set on fire. God forbid disavow. Tommy was there to go and do like marches down to London for free speech.
Yeah, exactly. He always takes something and turns it down, tries to push it down a dead end.
Yeah. We couldn't even work out what the march was for. I reviewed several people's accounts who were going, and even they didn't seem to know why they were going to the rally. They were just going. You know, it's like
Yeah.
5 pints and a fight.
Yeah, it's like all that with the rape gangs and everything, which is an appalling thing. But he turned all that into the Tommy Tardington Roadshow, didn't he? You know, suddenly it wasn't about the rape gangs at all. It was about free speech for Tommy, and you know there was all these posters with him with a gag over his mouth and so on, and so it's I find it odd how the righteous indignation of the British public is always sort of filtered through him. And he's always the person to be on these shows and everything. And it's the same with Farage at the moment. And they're talking about, when he was at school, he was a terrible racist, etc., etc. Well, why now? Why has it all just suddenly come out now? I think it's to get not to stop people from voting for him. I think it's to get people to vote for him. I think it's to make him into more of a figurehead, and to get people sort of our persuasion to vote for him.
That's very conspiratorial, David.
Well, it's like Martin W. Says in the comments there, Tommy is just an actor for the regime. Yeah, and Farage too. Not telling me that a city trader is not part of the establishment. Oh dear.
You see, I just don't know if I believe that the state runs lifetime actors. I used to believe this, but I don't know if I do anymore. It feels like it's too much for somebody to be a lifetime actor for the state, such as Tommy, such as Nigel Farage. I tend to believe that these are genuine people, except with their own personal agendas. I mean, do you think that Nigel Farage is, like I coin it, a lifetime actor of the deep state who is just running some kind of intelligence operation to defeat nationalism and whatever?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. 100%.
Wow.
I'll tell you
me
why. Because he pretty much said it in an interview. He said that the greatest thing, his greatest achievement, was destroying the BNP, which in some ways wasn't true, because the BNP destroyed itself. Nick Griffin was one of the biggest who destroyed the BNP.
But wouldn't the devil's advocate for that be that he's just like claiming glory? Like, what's the American term where you falsely claim when you've been in a war?
Stolen glory.
Stolen valor. Yeah.
Oh yeah, stolen
So he's
valor.
just
That's
doing
right.
To shine his own shoes.
Yeah. No. I'll tell you what's suspicious about it. The suspicious thing about it is the timing. UKIP was set up in 1993. I think it was 2 weeks after the British National Party got its first councillor.
Right. Didn't UKIP come out of the referendum party before my time? A man who died, I forget who. There was this thing in the 90s, a referendum party by some rich billionaire or something. I may be wrong about this.
I can't remember. I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, there are obviously disaffected conservatives. Who
James Goldsmith in 1994.
Goldsmith?
The referendum party. Yes, David.
Well, Goldsmith is also a very Old English name, actually,
Yes.
because, there's, of course, writer of Victor, the Vicar of Wakefield and so on is Goldsmith. But
In the May
I'm just
1997
going to,
general election, the referendum party spent
when it
its
says tycoon, you start wondering, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Had to flee France with his family when Nazi Germany overran the country in 1940.
I'm guessing your spider senses are tingling there, right?
Yes. British people of German Jewish descent. There we go, right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is my understanding of what the roots were. I may be completely mistaken, but anyway, there it is. The proto UKIP in the 90s, and this guy died unexpectedly or suddenly, apparently. So,
Yeah. So, right.
but anyway, my premise would be that this has been an organic movement over time, and it was Nigel's. I mean, why would the state allow Nigel to bang on about something that ended up like screwing the system over? That the system didn't want to end up, with us, ending up out of the European Union, etc.
Well, the European Union, and I said this before the Brexit referendum, I said it would make no difference whatsoever. It's just a distraction, a meaningless distraction. And I think I've been proven right. Because what my argument was, and I was on a millennial woe show talking about this. Yes, I know. Back in the day, about 10 years ago now. Something. No, can't be 10 years ago because it's not been around that long.
Were you on Millennial, David?
No, I've never been on Millennial. I was on one when he used to do regular shows. He did quite a number of shows on Brexit,
Right.
and privately he said, right, because I said, well, I'm not really, I don't see it as much of an issue, to be honest, one way or the other. He said, well, words come down from the top of the alt-right that we're all for Brexit, and and me as being me thought, fuck that, I'm going to say what I think. which is why, of course, they started, right, get rid of that David Yorkshire, is not one of us.
What did you think?
What I said was that it would make no difference whatsoever because the government would pursue the same policies as the European Union, independent of the European Union, because at the end of the day, they're all controlled by the WEF anyway. So, there are all these sort of supranational organizations like the WEF, WHO, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and so on. So, and they tell these these sort of blocks like the European Union and independent countries what their policies are, and they sort of haggle to a degree with them, but they have to go along with it to a certain degree.
Well, I mean, this is the long march of globalization, obviously. Look, as an idealistic young man, I was all for Brexit. Right, in 2016, I remember I plastered my town in Brexit posters, David. I used to go, I would form it into my training, and I would go out late at night, like 11 or 12 midnight, and run the whole town with like these these things that I print out off the internet. In a rucksack, and I plastered the entire town in Brexit posters, literally every night.
Well,
and now I think it was all a big scam. I think it was a scam. I think we've been scammed completely. I think we've been screwed over. We've ended up with the worst case of all things. I think now I'd be a freaking Remainer.
Yeah, well, one of the things that was interesting, I mean, if you look back to when we were in the EEC before the EU, there were politicians both on the Conservative side and on the Labour side who were against the European Union. Dennis Skinner was against the European Union, interestingly enough. Now, it was interesting what he said, because this was what I also noted. I said that, you know, we would run the risk of being isolated from our nationalist brothers in Europe,
Yes,
who were doing rather well at the time. And I think to an extent that's been the case, actually. And then, of course, because this what's happening to us is happening all over Europe. The same things are happening, and you're stronger together, if you see what I mean. It's because otherwise they can just pick states off one by one, and you know, this is going to have to be sorted out really by people of European descent all over the world, not just in Europe even, but in America, in the European diaspora. So Dennis Skinner talked about, I'm against the European Union because there are fascists in Europe and everything, and talked in those kind of terms. So wasn't Tony Benn against the EU? Yeah, Tony Benn as well. For the same reasons. A lot of those old school Labourites were indeed. You don't get them now, but you know, they've sort of died off now. Has Skinner died yet or not? I'm not quite sure.
I don't think so.
I know he retired and he was sort of getting fragile and so on. And I don't think you would see whether he was senile or not, because obviously he was retarded from the beginning. But
I'll just say the main reason I feel like it's all a scam is because, I mean, it has screwed our economy worse. We are worse off for it. Brexit was a complete mess. We did get screwed over. And as a young man, now I realise that forget the economy part if you disagree with that, but as a young man now, I realise that I'm actually in a worse position for having told everybody to vote Brexit in 2016, plaster my town in it and everything. I suddenly look around and realise, well, if I ever want to get out of this shithole, and you might say, well, you shouldn't do that anyway, SJJ, but if ever I want to get out of this shithole, if the need arises, it's much harder to do so now, exiting the European Union. I've actually ended up in a place where I have much less options available to me as a young person because of this decision. So I do think it's like they pulled the ladder up behind everybody's pulled the ladder up behind them now. Like before, we could go and live in any country in Europe and work. I know this was the bad aspect of being in the European Union too, because Europeans could come here to work, but now, I look around, and if I want to go anywhere else, it's much harder.
Yeah, there is that to it. If you want to sort of live somewhere else other than Britain, you need a visa now.
Yes.
And that poses difficulties. So there is that limited freedom aspect. Yeah. Of course, the boat people have not been limited at all.
No,
which was the reason that people really wanted Brexit, but it's made absolutely no difference to that whatsoever. And the problem with the Polish Labour that came over was that what companies were doing they were bypassing the British laws by recruiting them directly from Poland, where they would be subject to Polish laws, thereby paying them less than the minimum wage.
Yes.
So what they should have done was come down on that, and it would have ended all that. But they didn't, of course, because then of course the companies wouldn't have gained a financial benefit by going to Poland for their labour, because, as I say, they were recruited directly from recruitment centres in Poland.
While Bill says, look, the problem is that low-skilled Eastern Europeans were coming in. Well, the problem is they still are now, plus waves of non-European immigrants. We've ended up with the worst of all worlds. Now our towns and cities are being transformed by people who don't even, look remotely like us or whatever. On this SJJMAS this year, we need to be careful to maintain the channel and not get too extreme about things. But we all understand what the problems are. Post-Brexit, we ended up not with Polish people working in factories anymore. We ended up with people from Pakistan, India, Africa, all the other places. And it's like we've swapped one for 5 times as many of the other.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, the issue is unskilled Eastern Europeans coming into that's absolutely right. But as I say, it was because they could undercut the wages. So that's what they should have come down on, the companies who were bypassing the laws and so on, finding loopholes and everything.
Yes.
And it would have cut all that out. But ultimately, Poles, they're not really very much different from us. I mean, my former next door neighbour is the descendant of Poles who came during the war. Completely indistinguishable from you and I.
Yeah. I think people think that I'm Polish when I rock up with my Deliveroo bag, actually, at first, until I start to speak to them. And they just assume, oh, you must be Polish.
Do you have the Slavic squat?
I do not.
Oh.
Well, actually, I probably do, yeah. I used to do all that on my videos, didn't I?
Do you wear a shell suit?
I do not. Yeah. But, yeah, Poles used to come over, and the way that they could make this work is they would live like 5 of them in a house and go and work in a factory.
Yeah. Because, of course, our wages were so much higher, even in spite of them working for less than minimum wage. It was still a good wage to them,
yes,
as they were living in such squalid conditions.
Yes.
And often, of course, the landlords were in on the whole scam and everything. So they. I know, for example, a company director whose wife did the sort of estate agency related to that. So they were sort of working hand in glove there. And sleeping, often they used to sleep in shifts. So you'd have basically a couple in a particular room during the day, and another couple in that particular room at night, in all the different rooms. And I saw this firsthand. Saw this through a window in Guernsey, the Channel Islands, a few years ago. All the hotel work and everything and bar work was taken over by Poles.
Yeah.
So that was simply because what they did was they worked hard for 5 years or something, could go back very rich and buy a house straight off with no mortgage.
Yeah.
So from their perspective, I understand why they did it. But from our perspective, of course, it meant that anybody who was from the working classes was robbed of a livelihood.
At least they went home, though, most of them, David. Now, the type of migrants that we're getting are the ones who are coming here to stay with no intention of going home. It's a real different class, this post-COVID group of this Boris wave. It's a completely different thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's of course an economic problem. And
you know what people don't want to hear, though?
I'm more concerned about the rape and murder problem, which comes from people outside of Europe.
Sure. The problem that a lot of people don't want to hear, though, is that a lot of these are working, right? I see it regularly, not the Deliveroo shit. I see it on my way to my normie job. I drive through industrial estates, and there are, these industrial estates have big, at like 6 o'clock on a morning, it's like driving through Mogadishu. And these people are, all arriving to go and work in these factories. And so our industry is becoming completely reliant upon these people. It's getting harder and harder to do anything about it, basically, is my point.
Yeah, I understand. And of course, this has led to a lot of ill feeling, and rightly so. But people are sort of getting organized now. As I say, the problem to me is these fake organizers like Tommy Robinson and so on, who are there as a sort of a wedge, as a blocker, to organize it into something that's not effective. But people are seeing through this now, and what was good to see was the reaction on Twitter, the mass reaction against his Israel trip, especially when a lot of the Jews on there talked down to him so much, and people beginning to see what they're like, that they don't see non-Jews as the same, as of the same status as them. So, particularly that one who said, there's a special place in hell for the British. And Tommy there firmly took it up the arse,
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, like, the Tommy thing is a problem. I don't know what we're going to do about that. I did this video, though, right, where I
think it's solving itself. He had that sort of fake Christmas thing, and only about 1,000 people turned up. I think that Tommy's done now. He's a busted flush.
Don't know if I agree with that. I think he always appears and somehow manages to, at the opportune time, become the face and the figurehead of rising tensions that all then go marching down to London, get it all out, and then that's it. It's all over with. But I did a video, David.
I'm more optimistic than you, I think.
Well, good. I'm happy to go along with your view of things. But I did a video where I said the problem is, right, that if we don't vote for and wait for it, I know you're not going to like this.
I know what you're going to say already. Oh, here we go. I know.
I said you've got two choices. Right? It's either going to be Nigel Farage or it's going to be Tommy Robinson, and you pick your poison. Or, I mean, the other scenario is that we just get Labour in for the rest of the time. But you don't get to choose your leader. It happens to be Nigel Farage leading, as I put it, this current zeitgeist. It's not perfect. You think he's a little stooge of the state.
How long have you been saying shite like this for now?
Most of this year.
No, but not just this year.
Oh, well, probably last year. Look, Reform are going to win the next election.
Maybe.
If they don't, it's going to be the Labour Party. It's not going to be Conservatives.
No, that's true. The Conservatives have done. I think that people want something harder.
It
than
could
the
be the
Conservative
nightmare
Party.
coalition of Labour, Greens, Lib Dems, and SNP.
Well, there's this new guy of the Greens, this new gay
Yes.
of the Greens. This
Polanski.
Polanski, yes, any relation to Roman, of the same ilk, of course, but I think that he's unelectable, to be quite honest.
Yeah, they're popular with Zoomer, with idiot young Zoomers, especially young Zoomer girls and things who can vote now, David. They've been able to vote for years.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that they're all up in arms about this shooting on Bondi Beach, this anti-Semitic shooting and everything. And yet, at the same, in the same few days, Polanski and Monbiot, wasn't it? These two political Jews were talking about we need immigration because otherwise Europe won't survive. That whole Barbara Spectre. Oh, there he is. Oh dear. That whole Barbara Spectre spiel as usual. But anyway.
So Polanski's view is that literally as these boat people land on the beaches of Dover, they'll be given jobs.
Yeah. So that's going to go down like a lead balloon.
But the problem is,
basically, why would you vote for him and not Labour? Because they're interchangeable.
Young idiot Zoomers it's like the Greta Thunberg virus. You just believe the nonsense. And the Green Party have gone into, obviously that you don't see unless you know a little bit more about politics, then politics becomes very surface level for most people. Most people just kind of have like a very shallow understanding of things, so they only see the surface rhetoric. And somebody like Zach Polanski is going out, we need to save the planet, we need to tax the rich, and all these things resonate with young idiot Zoomers.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, that's actually good in a way, because it will tap into the Labour Party vote. It's not going to take away from reform, and I do actually want to see reform get in.
Oh, okay.
But not for the same reason you do. I want to see reform get in because the public will then see them fail to deliver what they want. They will fail to deliver nationalism, which is what people really want. And then that will create an opening for nationalist parties, proper nationalist parties. So the work that people like I have to do, and perhaps yourself, is to involve ourselves in nationalist politics and to pay, to sort of wait in the wings, if you like, but have that whole organisation and structure ready for when reform fail.
Well, I think this is similar to Brutus's view. He thinks, he wants elections every year or something like this, some crazy idea like this.
Is he still called Brutus?
He is, yes. One failure after another.
Is he?
He envisages.
I thought he was calling himself something else now.
It changes, but it's always Brutus, really. Alfred Brutus, something.
Alfred, that's it.
Alfred Brutus.
Right, but anyway, I see reasons to be, as I said, I kicked this off, but I see reasons to be optimistic, and I genuinely do, because people, as I say, they're not frightened of
the zeitgeist
the word
of the age.
Nationalism anymore.
No.
And they're not frightened to address the Jewish question anymore. The question, in other words, of Jewish supremacy. And so people are not frightened of being called racist anymore, which is wonderful news. People are happy to say, well, I am a racist. So people are becoming bolder, and that's in spite of the ever more stringent laws that are being brought in against freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and so on. So, yeah. So I do think that there are many reasons to be hopeful for the future. And I think I'm going to leave this particular episode at that.
Yes, everybody, David has to run. He told me in advance that he has an urgent engagement. So, David, we'll talk again soon, hopefully, unless I disappear into the ether again. But thank you for coming back on SJJMAS. It's been fun.
Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
We are illiberal. We want crime to be punished. We want our own country back. We wish to stand up for what we are inside our own culture. We want our glory to be manifested again. We wish to be central. We wish to be dominant. We wish to be primordial in our own country, in our own land, in our own way.
And you're still here. I didn't meet my goal, you bastards, so you won't find out who my favourite character in Doctor Who was, so you can all bugger off. Good night, everybody.